There were certainly a lot of things in terms of the commemoration, the memorializing of the 20th anniversary of 9/11 that made people feel sad, but also patriotic, made many of us have those feelings of anger, but also the remembrance of the resilience that we had as a city, as a country, as Americans. And it was a moment where you would hope people would reflect and have an understanding of there are foreign enemies in this world who continue to wish to do us extreme harm. If Al-Qaeda could have detonated a nuclear device in an American city, they would have. I mean, that's very clear from their own internal documents and the things that we have learned about that organization beforehand. They killed almost 3,000 Americans and just human beings here on our soil in one day. And yet, when something should be so clear, which is that this is the worst terror attack on U.S. soil ever, and that this should bring us all together as a people united against evil, there were some who were willing to say the most outrageous, idiotic, and despicable things, as long as it was used as a tool to transfer attention away from the jihadists, the Islamic jihadists who attacked us on that day, to, you guessed it, the threat of white nationalist terrorism here in America. A woman who's running for office in Florida, Pam Keith Esquire. Clay, do you ever put Esquire in your title? Pam Keith Esquire.
No,
Florida.
So far not.
Yeah, she wrote on 1/6/2021, 9/11, 2001, cease being the worst thing that happened to America in my lifetime. It's really weird and painful to process and say that, but it's the truth. And quite frankly, it's not even close. Clay, in the New York, so we'll get into that, but also in the New York Times, Spencer Ackerman, a leftist, writes the following. Even since insurrectionists invaded the Capitol, we've heard that January 6th is a closed chapter in American history. This is in the New York Times. No longer should America's threatening enemies be understood as foreign, a euphemism for Muslim, but instead as domestic, a euphemism for primarily white Americans on the far right. This is the crap that the New York Times publishes on the 20th anniversary of 9/11. It's QAnon shaman you're supposed to be terrified of, Clay.
It's I think, the biggest lie that's out there right now. And there are a lot of lies out there. So it's even hard to just choose which is the biggest lie that's going on. But maybe I should say the most durable lie is that white supremacy is in some way a major threat to the United States. That Joe Biden could base his campaign decision, he claimed, on the Charlottesville protest over a Robert E. Lee statue, which, by the way, one person died at, and I wish that hadn't happened. Obviously, no one stands against the idea of death more than the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show. We wish no one ever died. We are in favor of immortality.
We are a pro-life show across the board.
That's right. And so when you actually break it down, this lie, it goes to the root of the justification for much of the Democratic Party's entire basis of existence now, which it can really be summed up as everything is racist, but it goes to the heart of CRT. It goes to the heart of equity as opposed to equality, the clear shift from equality to equity. It's all rooted in this idea that there are evil boogeymen out there, that the KKK is hiding underneath your bed, that at any moment, if you are anything other than a racist white guy, you are in danger imminently from the KKK. And by the way, Buck, it's important to note what you just read from the New York Times. No other race or gender is very often referenced as causing problems in this country, right? If you said, hey, if the New York Times was willing to say, hey, you know why the murder rate's so high? Because of black men. That's statistically true in this country. Black men represent around 6% of the United States population, and they commit over half of all murders. So that's statistically true, and there are a lot of reasons for that, and it could be discussed. But if the New York Times wrote a editorial and it said, hey, the biggest threat in America today is black men when it comes to murder, it would be racist, right? Because you're not allowed to signal out that identity politics arena. But if you want to say, hey, white men are the biggest threat to America today because of a few loser white supremacists who, by the way, have no power. Can you even name me a powerful white supremacist?
No
in
power.
This country today?
There's articles, that guy that they always put on TV, the Spencer.
Richard Spencer, yeah.
He's been like kicked out of his home. He can't get a job. He's ostracized from society. I mean, that's what actually happens in America. But they pretend there's this white supremacist architecture that's just waiting to overthrow the government. And Clay, I mean, we're not exaggerating. We're not cherry picking here. How September 11th gave us January 6th is the title in this New York Times op-ed 2 days before the 20th anniversary of September 11th, explicitly drawing a straight line from September 11th to January 6th. And he finishes this piece with the following: we need organized grassroots action to unseat insurrectionist allies from office, to overturn the structural works of white supremacy like voter suppression laws, and to abolish the institutional architecture of the war on terror before it threatens even more American lives and freedom. Clay, I mean, this guy's a lunatic. I mean, I've been familiar with his work. He's like a leftist that's supposedly an expert on national security. And you see this and you understand this is insurrection has replaced collusion. This is a word for stupid people or people who are very dishonest and are trying to control stupid people to rally around to demonize the opposition to their power, to their plans, which in this case is everybody who is center and center-right. Everybody. You're an insurrectionist unless you go along with this, just like you were a Russian collusionist unless you believe the Russia-Trump fairy tales.
Do you agree with me, by the way, that white men are like the only group that can be publicly called out as an identity in the New York Times pages now? Like they expressly avoid mentioning any other race or gender as the problem in America.
The left has made it a game. It is virtuous from the leftist perspective, Clay, to spew as much bile against white male conservatives in particular as possible. The enemy of America to the left is the white male conservative. That
white males in general, too, I think. Even like
if you're a lib, you get the special, you're an ally, you're one of the good guys.
But
you have to bend the knee and cry and say you're sorry for everything, but they do that.
Well, you curl up in the fetal position, but they turn on you so quickly if you're a white man, even if you're a liberal. And I just think it's so fascinating that in this world where every individual is supposed to be judged and we talk about equity and everything else, it doesn't matter when it comes to white men. And we're going to use this tiny minority of white supremacists as a stand-in to represent white men all over the country. Like, it is such a fundamental lie. And again, I think it's the biggest lie because it goes to the essence of what the Democratic Party represents right now, which is the idea of everything is racist. In order for everything to be racist, you have to find somewhere racism, right? And a lot of it's made up. The Jussie Smollett, almost cursed there, Jussie Smollett BS and all the other things that we've had to deal with. There's a great deal more demand for explicit and overt racism than exists in this country today. And so it has to be systemic. And it has to be based and rooted at the feet of white men everywhere. You, me, Buck, a huge percentage of our listeners out there. We're all everything that's wrong with America today. That's what the New York Times believes.